Hey guys, this is the Lehrbehr here for the MTGO, and it's Tuesday, so it's gonna be drafts. And for you today, I have a little bit something special. Today, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about M13 and how to draft it, or at least my initial observations from what I've seen from the set so far. So, before we get into it, I just want to say that these are just my personal opinions, and it's definitely not anything set in stone. My opinions may change over time. If they do, I'll tell you guys as best as I can. But first off, I'd just like to say my general thoughts about M13 as a set. M13 as a set is very fast, extremely fast actually. I thought it would be a lot slower since they switched out the mechanics from Bloodthirst, which was absolutely ridiculously fast, to Exalted, but in fact this set is just as fast as M12 was. With that being said, M13 is a very spell-heavy format, and what I mean by that is that the removal is absolutely ridiculous. Compared to Avacyn Restored, the removal is miles and miles and miles better. Just comparing some of the two things here, in Avacyn you had maybe, 4 or 5 removal spells. You had Deathwind, Bone Splinters, and we're talking a common here, Bone Splinters, Pillar of Flame, Righteous Blow, and I'm not sure what else. I forget, but in this set, Divine Verdict is a crappy one, but still much better than Righteous Blow since it kills everything. You have Searing Spear, you have Murder, the pump spells are better, Unsummon. So the spells in this set are really at a premium. So what that means is that I think that M13 is a very fast format, but it also feels pretty attrition-y to me, and what I mean by that is, since the removal is so good, it basically becomes whoever can play out their guys, do as much damage, and then at the end, once you trade the spells, whoever has the best board is probably going to win, because the removal spells are able to take out the best guys. So, whereas the spells weren't as good in Avacyn Restored, therefore things like Nettleswine, 4/3, could just dominate a board. In this set, there's a lot more removal to deal with something like Nettleswine. A Nettleswine, a 4/3, Pillar Flame could not kill it, Righteous Blow could not kill it, Bone Splinters, you had to 2-for-1 yourself to kill it. Deathwind was the only real card that could kill that Nettleswine, whereas in this set you have Searing Spear, Divine Verdict, Murder, you can encrust it, there are so many spells in this set that really take out creatures that it becomes really attrition-y. So that's my thoughts about M13 as a set in general. So when you're doing a draft, you really want to take spells high. So you want to take things like Murder pretty highly, unless you get a bomb creature. And I'm going to go over my top 5 picks at the end of this draft that are not rares. So next I'm just going to move on to the strongest colors. In M13, all the colors are strong. Everything has a viable chance to win. In Avacyn Restored, you saw there was a definite weakness in black because its creature base was just absolutely miserable. And green was so good because its creatures were so good. And the reason why that dichotomy existed was also a result of the fact that the removal was so bad in the set that whichever color had the best creatures was going to be the best color in the set, and that's almost always green in the first place. So that's why you saw that happen. In M13 though, all the colors are really good, they all have good spells. With that being said, I think blue probably has the weakest commons in the set, but it's still very good. I would not take blue if you see it, but I think black is definitely the strongest color because its creatures are very efficient. There are a lot of Exalted guys in black, and those makes their creatures very good, and it also has the best removal. Or some of the best removal. So I think black is probably the strongest color in M13, but all of them are viable, so I wouldn't necessarily prefer one color over the other. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was archetypes for the set, and I'm not going to mention things like blue-white skies, which is just blue-white flyers, or green-white, big dudes, because that's always in a set. In M13 you have, from my understanding, 3 archetypes, 3 big archetypes, and those are Black-Red Enchantment Burn. This deck takes advantage of cards like Mog Flunkies, Tormented Soul, and also things like Dark Favor and Volcanic Strength, cheap enchantments that pump up their guys to do a lot of damage really fast, and then to kill them with burn at the end of it. So the burn at the end is things like Chandra's Fury, which deals 4 damage to the player and also 1 damage to all the creatures that they control, and also like Searing Spear, Volcanic Geyser, and stuff like that to deal damage to the face, or just clear away for their guys. So that's a big, and I think that's probably the best archetype in the set so far. All those cards are really underrated, so you can get things like Dark Favor, Volcanic Strength like last pick sometimes, and Tormented Soul goes pretty late, and that's a pretty key card for that deck. So you want to keep a lookout for those kinds of cards when you're drafting. Another set, another archetype that I've seen is Black-White Exalted, because those are the 2 colors with the most Exalted, and that can get pretty stupid pretty quickly too. Black has like 4 or 5 Exalted creatures, and so does White. And if you just grab them fast enough, you can really, if you curve out well enough, you can have like a 4/4 or a 5/5 attacking on turn 4, which is pretty hard to deal with. So that's also, those are the 2 aggro decks in the format, I would believe. The strongest ones, because they can, if they curve out correctly, there's like a really hard chance that you're going to actually be able to beat them if you're on the draw. The last archetype that I wanted to mention, because it's so fun, I know a lot of people like to do this, and also it's the first set in a while that I can remember this, this deck being viable, is Blue Mill. So it's Blue X Mill. It uses cards like Mind Sculpt and Vidalcan Entrancer, and then if you open Jace, you're set. But it uses cards like Mind Sculpt and Vidalcan Entrancer to mill your opponent. It tries to play defense, so that deck will probably also be playing Kraken Hatchling, because that card I think is underrated in this set, because it plays defense so well on the ground. And then it also just like mills them out. So I think the best color that you could possibly pair that with is black, because black's removal is so good in this set, and that's going to really help you out on keeping the creatures at bay that your opponent plays. You can also pair that with white for Safe Passage, because Safe Passage it gets kind of stupid, and you would also play a lot of Archaeomancers in that deck to get back the Mind Sculpts, to get back Safe Passage and the removal, in order to get back all your spells. So that's definitely a solid archetype for this set as well. But I also think that that archetype is probably going to be overdrafted, because it's such a fun deck to play in the first place, that a lot of people will probably end up drafting it. Now, in terms of underrated versus overrated cards, I'm just going to go over them really quickly. Underrated cards in this set are cards that play defense really well. So these are cards like Giant Scorpion. If you ever played Zendikar, this card was always really good. 1/3 Death Touch is so hard, it just automatically trades. Deadly Recluse, again, plays defense really well, trades with any creature that your opponent swings with. Vidalcan Entrancer, 1/4 that mills, it plays defense really well. 1/4 but is the 4 toughness is the key toughness in this set, because there are cards like Searing Spear, Flames of the Firebrand, a lot of things that deal 3 damage that 4 toughness won't die to. So Vidalcan Entrancer is really good, and then same thing for Kraken Hatchling, which I mentioned before. 1 power, or 1 mana for a 0/4 that will stall the board for at least 3 turns is very good if you're playing the Blue-White Skies deck to really hold up the board. I really think that card's underrated. In this set you can get it pretty late, and it's definitely playable. I'm not sure I would play it in every deck, but if you're playing a control deck or like Skies, I would definitely play that card. So next up on my list is Tormented Soul, Volcanic Strength, and Dark Favor. Those 3 cards go together because they belong in the black-red enchantment burn deck that I was talking about earlier. They all go very late and are pretty good for the success of that deck. In the format, Tormented Soul comes down early, is unblockable, and then will be dealing either 4 damage or 3 damage on turn 3 if you can throw on turn 2 rather, if you throw one of those enchantments on it. So those are very underrated cards in this set. The last underrated card also belongs in that black-red enchantment deck, but also just in general, I think it's just an underrated card in the set, because, and I'm going to say it's Mog Flunkies. Mog Flunkies is a 3/3 that can't attack or block alone, but considering the set is very fast, a 2-mana 3/3 in the set is pretty valuable, and a lot of the times it won't be swinging alone. With that being said, the removal is so good in this set that you will have times where Mog Flunkies is sitting there and not really doing anything. But I think considering when I first looked at this set, Mog Flunkies was a standout terrible card. Like, why did they include this? This card is absolutely worthless. And the more I've got to seen it and played against it and played with it, it's definitely pretty strong in the set, so it's underrated. Now, in terms of overrated cards in draft, mind you, you guys may disagree with some of these, but I'm going to go over my overrated cards in draft. My first one is Mind Sculpt. Mind Sculpt is definitely like a good card if you're playing that mill deck. I'd say you definitely want like a couple, but in terms of the mill deck itself, you might think that Mind Sculpt is better than Entrancer in the deck, but in all honesty, I think Entrancer is more important in that deck because it plays defense, like I was saying before. You are not winning with damage in that deck, and you are really going to try to stave off as much damage as possible. Vidalcan Entrancer sits there and blocks all day, and will mill. Although it is slow, I've won games just sitting there with 2 Entrancers blocking and then just milling. I think that that card is a lot stronger than Mind Sculpt in the deck, and people are going to take that, at least in the beginning, I think they're going to take Mind Sculpt over Entrancer, but I really think that Entrancer is better than Mind Sculpt. Once again, because of that 4 toughness, because it plays defense so well. Next card on my list is Roaring Primodox. I know you guys are I think you guys are probably gonna disagree with this, but I built the deck, and the draft this week is actually me trying to build the Primodox deck with a friend. But I'm gonna say that Primodox is not good in draft. That's different from Sealed. In Sealed, I think Primodox is very strong because Sealed is generally a slower kind of format because you don't get to pick your cards as they come to you. But Primodox in draft is hard to, a Primodox deck is hard to do. The reason why I say this is because Primodox takes away from your board presence every turn. Every turn you have to bounce a creature. So say you go turn 2 Elvish Visionary, turn 3 Yavis Force Mage, turn 4 Primodox, which is exactly what that deck wants to do. Next turn you're going to have to bounce your Force Mage or your Visionary, most likely your Visionary on turn 5. Considering how that deck plays out against some of the other decks in the format, you want as many creatures out on the board because the deck is the format is so fast. Against blue-white skies, you're going to be behind when you bounce that creature. Against the black-red deck, you're going to be behind if you bounce that creature. Against the Exalted deck, you're going to be behind when you bounce that creature. Primodox makes you think that you're getting card advantage because you get to reuse your creatures all the time, those come into play effects, but in actuality you're losing card advantage. Or you're not losing card advantage, but you're losing board presence always, and that's going to put you on the back foot. And it's hard to come back once you've played the Primodox because say you hit your turn 5 land and you don't have a 3-drop, you're going to replay the Visionary, or you're going to play another 4-drop. So then next turn what are you going to do? Are you going to bounce your 4-drop again? So unless you curve out like perfectly, it's really hard to accomplish in general. The next card on my list is, or it's a group of cards, but I'm going to say high casting cost removal is overrated in this set. Cards that I include in this are Turn to Slag and also Volcanic Geyser, which is actually kind of surprising because I really like that card at first, but there's much better removal in the set. Turn to Slag is 5 mana for 5 damage, but it's so slow. By the time you play it on turn 5, you're only killing 1 guy, and you're going to have taken a lot of damage from that 1 guy during that time. The same thing, Volcanic Geyser for 4 mana only does 2 damage to a creature, which isn't that great. I mean, I could imagine that being good, but there are other spells in this format that do more damage for much cheaper mana. And I would definitely take them over either Turn to Slag or Volcanic Geyser in this set. I think that those cards are overrated. People think that those cards should go a lot higher than they do, they should go lower than they do right now. I don't like those cards right now because the format is very fast and the removal is so good that there are just better cards for cheaper mana. The last thing that I want to say, and is just not in terms of M13, but in particular, just like in drafts in general, mass removal is overrated in draft. The reason why I say this is because if you're playing against a good draft player, they will play around mass removal. It's very hard to get a very good trade for your mass removal spell. Say you're playing against a green-white deck or something like that. You play a turn 2, they play a turn 2, you play a turn 3, they play a turn 3, that's just better. All of a sudden now, if you're thinking about trying to play Mutilate or or Titanic Growth, not Titanic Growth, Planar Cleansing, or Magma Quake, one of the other mass removal spells in the format, all of a sudden you're trading the Magma Quake and your 2 creatures that you didn't know you were going to have to trade for his 3 or 4 creatures, which isn't that good of a trade. And then if your opponent already realizes that he has board presence and doesn't need to flood the board, he's going to hold back until he knows that either he's going to win or he knows that, you know, you're going to lose just as much for that mass removal spell. It's very hard to come by. I see people taking mass removal very high, like pick 3, pick 4, and I'd rather take a good removal spell over a mass removal spell. Any point. I would take Murder over Planar Cleansing or any of those cards, hands down, very, very quickly, because it deals with the best creature that your opponent has on board and doesn't cost you anything other than that card in hand. Whereas Planar Cleansing is going to cost you any creatures that you have. Sure, it could, you know, every once in a while it'll get you that 4-for-1 or win you the game because your opponent completely overextended into it, but good players will not overextend into it. If you see my drafts, I always think about, okay, at this point, like, what are the mass removal spells in the format? Do I need to play out into anything else out onto the board? Do I need to run into that removal spell? And most of the times it's no. So I hold back my cards just in case that they have it. Even if they don't have it, I end up winning most of the time. So I think that mass removal is generally overrated in these sets, or in draft in general. Now the last thing that I wanted to do for the M13 Draft Primer is give you my top 5 picks. So the first is going to be an honorable mention. That honorable mention goes to Flames of the Firebrand. 3 mana for 3 damage is not as, you know, cost efficient as, you know, Searing Spear, but being able to split up that damage is very, very powerful, especially because decks like Black-Red and Black-White have a lot of 2 and 1 toughness creatures. That Flames of the Firebrand is almost an automatic 2-for-1, or sometimes a 3-for-1. I've definitely 3-for-1'd opponents before. I think you might see that in the draft later. But against some decks, that card is absolutely terrible. Like Green-White, their smallest creatures are 2/2s, sometimes 3/3s, so it's a 1-for-1. It's not as good. Don't get me wrong, like Flames of the Firebranding as Centaur Courser is definitely solid, but I don't think it is strong as the other cards on the list that I've made. This list also does not include rares. Obviously, if you open a bomb rare, if you open Jace or a Planeswalker or Johnny, something like that, take it by all means over this list, but this is just a general uncommons list that I came up with really quickly, just sort of, you know, just give you an idea of what my pick order is right now. So the fifth best card I would take right now is Rancor. Rancor is absolutely amazing in this set for 2 reasons. First of all, it's an aggro card, which goes along with M13, and second, with the removal being so good, when they eventually kill that creature or that creature trades, you get back Rancor and turn your Elvish Visionary into a 3/1 Trampler. It's an absolutely ridiculous card in this set. The 4th best card, in my opinion, in this set is Oblivion Ring. Oblivion Ring is your go-to removal spell almost all the time. It takes out anything that you want. Anything, artifact, enchantment, creature. I mean, you can read the card. It's so solid. It's so versatile. But I think that it's number 4 on my list because it does get removed removed by enchantment removal. Acidic Slime is in the set. There's also War Priest of Thune. Also, your opponents can board in Naturalize or Erase to try to get rid of enchantments, especially if you're playing like Mark of the Vampire or something else. There's definitely a reason to have enchantment removal in your sideboard. So Oblivion Ring is, just like in other sets, weak to enchantment removal, so that's why it's number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list is Murder. Murder is, you know, destroy target creature for 3 mana. There's not really much to say. It's the best removal spell in the format. Really versatile. It's in the strongest color in the set in the first place. But I think the next 2 cards are just more powerful in terms of just like taking over the game. That I think that Murder belongs at number 3. Number 2 on my list is Tauren's Invocation. Tauren's Invocation is 4 mana for 2/2 flyers. If you haven't played with this card already, it's absolutely ridiculous. 4 power of flying. It's not like this is the first time we've ever seen this before, but for some reason getting it in the form of 2/2/2s is better than 1/4/4. I mean, normally in core set you would see Air Elemental, which is 5 mana for a 4/4 flyer, and this does it for 4 mana and splits it into 2/2/2s. So this card is absolutely ridiculous and is like by far like, you know, it's the second on my list for M13. And then finally, the last card on my list, if you haven't guessed it by now, is Vampire Nighthawk. Vampire Nighthawk is just as crazy as it was in Zendikar. 2/3 lifelinking, death touch, trades with anything very well, and it makes racing almost absolutely impossible because that 2 lifelink is so absolutely key in the set. It's a reason why Mark of the Vampire is absolutely ridiculous, because if you get in one swing at that card, all of a sudden your opponent's like, crap, I'm way far behind. Same thing with Vampire Nighthawk. That card is, you know, absolutely crazy. It just does ridiculous things, and although there's so many 3 toughness removal spells, Searing Spear, Flames of the Firebranded, Murder, Vampire Nighthawk, if it goes unpunished, it'll just absolutely take over a game. Your opponent can do like nothing about it if he doesn't have the removal. So with that being said, that was my M13 Draft Primer. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell me if you guys disagree with anything, or if you'd like this. Do you like this kind of video? Do you like how I talked about these cards? Did you want to see anything else? Would you like to see more videos like this in the future? Just tell me what you guys think. Leave comments below. Like the video, and make sure you check out, or like the video, I'm not sure which direction I should be pointing, but anyway, like the video and make sure to check out all the other great videos on the MTGO. We're looking to become the first or the #1 site on the net for Magic, so subscribe to the YouTube channel, check out the site, and I hope you like the video. I'll see you guys next time.